Greetings and salutations. It's another beautiful Sunday morning, and we're talking about Romans 12:2, well, 1 and 2. Um, but we're going to do it very quickly because I'm exhausted. My wife was in South Carolina for the last couple days, and she flew in last night. Her flight was delayed by like 4 hours, so she didn't even land until almost 2 o'clock, and so we dropped off her mom, and she had, of course, baggage, like, so they land at like 2 a.m., like just before 2 a.m. Then of course the baggage is delayed getting off the plane, so I didn't make it to my bed until like after 4 a.m. And of course, Texas, so it's good and bright, good and early in the spring. So yeah, we were basically up at 8. Not a whole lot of sleep here, and I'm feeling it. Not as young as I used to be. But surprisingly, so we have, so that the other stuff I'm taking, right? Um, they have another product that's like, I only took half a dose. It's supposed to, like, better than caffeine. Like, it doesn't give you instead of it just being like, here's this giant energy boost, right? It's a stimulant that doesn't cause you to have a heart attack, right? Like overdosing on caffeine. I only took half a dose. I'm actually fairly awake for the fact that I should just be a zombie at the moment. So good thing. So yeah, this will be a short conversation because I'm gonna need a nap. Um, can't rock it like I did back when I was 18. You don't even get in until 2 or 3 in the morning, and then you're up at 6 and working out, and not anymore. Nope, I need my sleep. Um, I don't really think there's much in the way of updates at all. Let's just keep Alan in our prayers with the situations going over there with, again, the neighbors to the church itself, right? Um, they are, their new location. They kind of, there's conflict going on, so we just need God's hand to move in there. Um, and yeah, I think that's basically the only real news. Let's continue to pray for our country, and of course the world. And that's going to tie into what we're going to talk about today a little bit as well, because I do think we're getting a little, what does in not of mean, right? And I think that's a great question that we need to re-examine, because that's what we're doing on this channel. We're re-examining. It's it's actually not ironic, but I think it's very telling that we're going to Romans today, because I was planning on doing a study on Romans. Oh, Gene, it's okay. I literally just started. Um, so I think we're going to do Romans for like the next couple of weeks, like as a review, and go through, probably not as line by line like we did with Hebrews. But I like to kind of hit all of the epistles um, in over the next couple months, and just go through them. I think there's a certain point where you get so in depth on everything that you sort of miss the forest for the trees sometimes. So we're gonna go back and do all the epistles, um, and we'll still do the cross referencing to the Old Testament and reference that, but like we'll do that for like the first part. Like the first week will be hitting up the Old Testament references, so and sort of an overview of the book, um, and then we'll just go through the book itself. So. Oh, well, yeah, Romans is a good book to go through. Susan Robinson's going through Romans as well. So, yeah, but like I said, I think we'll start Romans. We'll just hit all the epistles, you know. So I found it kind of interesting that today's verse, the thing that's in my head right now is Romans 2 or 12:2. So, it's very telling. I'm going to go ahead and open with some prayer, and then like I said, this is going to be a short one because I'm tired. I am tired, but I'm functionally tired. So I think we all understand that. Yes, okay. So Susan mentions chapter 13 is hard. It is. It is, and that's why we're going to go through the whole book. And the epistles have a lot of hard things in them. They do, which is why we kind of need to deal with it. Because honestly, with today's topic, in many ways is sort of the culmination of a lot of things we've been talking about, and it's been on my mind recently. So it's why I kind of wanted to go back through Romans and go through the epistles, because the epistles are the Gospels are the history and of Jesus. Acts is the beginning of the church. The epistles, and of course Revelation that's the end. This is what we know is coming. But the epistles are, how do we make this stuff here, the Gospels and Acts, how do we make that into our lives? That's what the epistles are. That's what they were working through. So I think that's it's something we need to play with and examine. So that's why I thought, like I said, this really is a culmination of what's been on my mind. So let's start with some prayer, and then we'll talk about it real quick. Heavenly Father, we thank you and we praise you for all that you've done. Father, we just ask that you would allow your Spirit to move in this conversation, that you would show us your wills and your ways. Father, help us to stay separate from the world, but not so separate that we are of no use. But allow us to protect ourselves from the evils of this world. Not the tragedies or the pains, in so much as that comes to all of us, but the evils that corrupt us, that cause us to follow unworthy things, to pursue non-edifying and Christ glorifying paths. Father, help to remind us that we are your ambassadors and your ambassadors alone, that everything else we do comes out of that understanding. It's in your Son's most heavenly name we pray. Amen. So let me start with what prompted this particular conversation. We've talked in the past recently about how I've been very disappointed by, again, no one on any of the channels that I'm with, right? This is a broader sort of our thought leaders seem to oh, Jean, please, yeah, this is why this is yes, she's fine, but yeah, go do what you need to do. This is why it's recorded. You can come back and listen whenever you'd like. So I've been talking about all these people who are supposed to be and presented as thought leaders, how I was very disappointed in a lot of the things that they were doing and how they were behaving. And this week is very much the culmination of this situation, where a lot of it sort of happened at the same time. It was interesting how a lot of things happened at the same time. But, so Steven Crowder got into this fight with the Daily Wire, and it felt like the Daily Wire was going after him because his presentation was for the broader conservative movement, right? Saying, hey, we got issues. He didn't use anyone's name. They called themselves out in this whole thing. And it led to this infighting, and I just wasn't happy to see it because it seemed unnecessary. It felt unnecessary. And so that was a couple months ago. Here we are this week, essentially. And what bothers me is how people present. Again, it's how people present things that really starts to make me wonder about things. So online, some people come out and say, hey, Steven Crowder's getting a divorce. And he's been going through divorce. He hasn't told anyone because he wants to, because he's lying to you and wants you to maintain this thing. And I'm like, well, hold on. First of all, if he is, because again, he hadn't announced, like, why would he talk about that on air? Like, that's a personal matter. Why would that be something everyone needs to know? It would be one thing if he was a spiritual leader. He's not. He's a political commentator and a comedian. Why would he talk about that? And so, of course, the next day he comes out and he admits, like, yes, it's what's happening. It was not. He's like, it's not my decision. She doesn't want to be married anymore. We're just asking for privacy, which is, again, it's a personal matter. That's where it shouldn't have leaked anyway. People shouldn't have been talking about it anyway, but it's what happened. So he's like, just privacy. He's like, this is, sort of a no fault divorce kind of situation. And so his soon to be ex-wife, because they're still going through this process, right? She leaks a video that's very heavily edited to someone who then goes and puts it on the internet. And of course, people are sitting here screaming about how terrible he is. And I'm like, I've been on the inside of several divorces, not mine. I'm still married, but I've seen several. I've been on the inside of several friends who've had divorces. I'm like, yeah, this video isn't good. A, it's still none of our business. And B, there's some things about them just feel really off. Like there's context that we're missing. It's a 3-minute snip. And some of the worst things that are mentioned are sort of mentioned off screen and by the person commenting on the thing, right? So it feels like it feels weird. I'm like, why are we talking? Like, why is this even an issue for anyone? And again, people, going after this. And so then he comes out and he on Saturday night and he's like, hey, I asked for privacy, but apparently the parties involved, he's clearly saying his wife or his soon-to-be ex-wife. It's like that since y'all don't want, it's like if privacy won't work, then we'll just do the truth. Instead of these cleverly edited videos out of context, he's petitioned the court to release all the information, everything. And so I was interested to see, I'm trying to, like, I don't even want to read about this, but it's kind of hard to avoid. And then everyone's like, well, why is he? Well, I thought he wanted privacy. Why is he releasing all this information to make his ex-wife look bad? Okay, hold up. First of all, why is this a conversation at all? This is some dude's personal life. Secondly, you were all jumping up and down on him because of how horrible he was, asking for privacy. And once his ex-wife comes out and releases this information or releases these videos, you jump on him for being terrible. So now he's saying, okay, I wanted privacy in this, which is reasonable. So I'm just going to release everything. And now you're jumping up and down on him because he's defending himself from your attacks and her attacks. Now, I don't know who's right and wrong in this. I tend to think it's none of my business unless either of them have done something legally or, really honestly, legally evil. This is a personal matter. We shouldn't have to be like, this shouldn't be happening in the public at all for any reason. So this isn't a defense of him. It's more of what's prompted me to think about this is all of these supposed thought leaders who are supposed to be good Christian people, and how the second they had an opportunity to go after someone personally, they jumped on it. They sunk their teeth into it. They're like, yeah, let's get. It was just genuinely disgusting to see. It's still genuinely disgusting to see. And that made me think about sort of, again, y'all may have caught on to this thought that I've been having for a while, which is, how do we as Christians live in this world? What has gotten us to this point that everything's just trash? And it's because we weren't being Christians. We were allowing others to determine what we thought, how we interacted with each other, how we had discussions. We weren't being bigger than the world. And that made me think of Romans 12. And this whole situation is like, why are these people just being so evil? Why again, if there's something legally that's happened, then once that is revealed, then okay, if there's something that, again, there's things that are of public interest, even in a divorce, and that is wrongdoing. Okay, that would be of note publicly if someone had done something evil, again, physical abuse or any kind of real actual abuse, because there are things beyond physical abuse as well. But again, things that are legitimate interest of the public, okay, fair enough. But if it's just people aren't getting along, I would imagine, I mean, I don't know about y'all, but most comedians I've looked at, they don't tend to have the most pleasant home lives. And people who buck the system the way he does tend to be very hard people to work for or live with. That's just what it is, right? So the fact that he was getting a divorce, I mean, it saddens me as a human being. Obviously, I don't know him, but it's also not necessarily a surprise. I imagine he's probably a very hard person to live with. That's what he is. He's a perfectionist. You see it in what he does. So it's a private matter. I don't see why it needs to be a part of the public domain at all, particularly at this point with what's out there. And so I'm thinking, why are these Christians, these supposed Christians, right? Why were they so quick to jump on his private life? And I can see there's some private stuff sort of going on, but it made me think about this Jerry Springer just died. Like the day all this is happening on Saturday, I think it was Friday or Saturday, or maybe it was on Thursday. Anyway, during this whole period, Jerry Springer dies. And I know there was all these people around saying, oh, isn't it, oh, he's Jerry Springer. He was so, and they were trying to be nice about it. I'm like, the dude was trash. The dude made a career out of destroying not out of using people's pain and tragedy and just making money off it. Like the dude was trash. And I thought about essentially what they're doing is just Jerry Springer part 2. These people who are just so quick to jump on his personal life and this personal pain, and they're drawing it out into the public. It's Jerry Springer 2.0. Like I said, if something were to come out from, again, through the legal process that says, hey, there was this misdoing, okay, that's worth knowing. If it's, again, crimes were committed, but if it's just two people didn't get along, again, he's not a religious leader. Okay, he's in the secular world. Sometimes people just don't get along. That's just what it is. But they jumped so quickly on us because they're being Jerry Springer. They're masking being Jerry Springer by trying to, oh, I want to show you the truth of these people. And you're not exposing any truth. You're being salacious. You're being Jerry Springer. You're being of the world. So let's talk about Romans 12. And this is why it's important. I'm reading from the ESV. I'm going to start in verse 1. It says, I appeal to you, therefore, brothers, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God and what is good and acceptable and perfect. This whole situation has shown me that too many people for whom the idea of the thought leader has been put upon them, they, in their fight against the world, they've become very much the world. They've become this thing. Well, again, if you've been with us for a while, most of you have, you've probably heard me say or tell the story of how it was like two Christmases ago now. I was talking to my father-in-law, and we were talking about the American church, and this thing is that, I've noticed that in the book of Revelations, the church in Ephesus or Philadelphia, Laodicea, but instead we call ourselves the American church. And in English, the adjective is sort of again, what's the thing that's important? It's the blue door. The blue is what separates it from the other doors. Well, we're the American church, which means what? We aren't the church in America. We're the American church. And he mentioned that the American church doesn't value wisdom anymore because America doesn't value wisdom or patience or kindness, mercy. Doesn't value those things. As a culture, we don't value those things. And if you're the American church, then the church won't respect those things either. The American church has been conformed to the world. These Christians are happy to go after someone's personal pain that they had asked to be private because They are thinking like Jerry Springer. They want to make money and make their name off of someone's personal pain and private pain. There's no grace. There's no wisdom. There's no attempt to understand. There's just, how do we get a fight going? I'm not saying anyone's innocent. I'm not saying he's innocent. I'm saying it isn't that situation that bothers me. It's everyone else's response. And here's the bigger thought. Isn't that all of us, though? Isn't it all of us? Isn't that the problem? Where are the people standing up to say, look, this is Jerry Springer crap. This is what we need to be doing. We need to be focusing on things that are good. We need to be focusing on patience. We need to be showing grace and mercy and love. Yes, when someone does evil, condemn that evil. But rumor, it's just gossip. Gossip, I've said this a lot of times. Why? You want to come down and say, look, here in this list, here's all the things that are evil. Look, homosexuality is evil. Right. It's absolutely there. Completely agree with you. Where's that energy when it gets to gossip? When was the last time you heard anybody condemn gossip from a religious standpoint? I can't think of it. And you're going to bring all this energy to the sins that you don't like, but you ignore the sins that you do. You're not being renewed in your mind. You are changing these scriptures to match what you want. You're simply picking and choosing what you will be changed by because you've been conformed to the world and you like the mold that it's given you. You don't want to be made transformed by renewing your mind and testing so you can discern what the will of God is, what is good and acceptable. You don't want to make yourself a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable. You want to look like you have, and you want the cheap answer. I'm gonna call out evil. Okay, great. So you're gonna call out slavery to make everyone's iPhone, or so that you can buy a Hershey's bar? No, I'm gonna slander somebody whose life I am not involved in at all because he's got a big name. Okay, that's gossip. That's not calling out evil. Why? Because Jerry Springer did it and made him a lot of money. He's famous. Genuinely disgusting human being, made the world a worse place to live in. He passes away and everyone's like, oh, wasn't he just so wonderful? No, he wasn't. He promoted the destruction of people's lives. He embarrassed people on television. Like, this is not a good person. I'm sorry. That's not a good person doesn't do that. There was one woman, I cannot remember her name. She had a daytime talk show, and I only heard about it later because someone was talking about what happened. And I'm trying to remember who it was. And she brought this guy out, and she was talking to him, and his wife comes out, and he's like, yeah, we're having some trouble with our marriage, and we're going to come here, and she said we can come here, we can talk about things, work this through. This one wasn't Ricky Lake. That's the thing. It was someone else. It was somebody else. But Ricky Lake, again, they're all the same. They're all the same. I cannot remember who this woman was. But they bring him out, and the wife says, I've been having an affair on you for the last 5 years. You can watch this man's heart just break on film. And he looks at me and says, "Who? With whom?" Oh no, she said I've been having an affair for a while. She didn't even say how long. And the woman, I cannot remember who this person was because it wasn't Ricky Lake. But like I said, Sally, they're all the same. Like this is just indicative. It was just the person was supposed to be presenting themselves as a better person, kind of a thing. So that's why it does, But it was indicative of the whole thing. And he's asking reasonable questions. Like he's trying to process what he just heard. You can tell this wasn't, a paid actor kind of a situation. And the woman um, uh, kept asking, the show host kept asking, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who it was with. It doesn't matter for how long it was. Just, are you gonna make this marriage work? And this dude with tears in his eyes just turns out, I don't know. This show host, and it doesn't matter who it was, Jerry Springer, Ricky Lake, Oprah, Dr. Phil, I don't care. They're all the same. All of them are the same. They took this man's private pain and just, it's like, let's torture this man live on air. And it's probably recorded, but it's like, we're gonna record this man being tortured on air with the worst news of his life, the greatest pain he's ever going to have. Let's get that on film so we can sell it to people. Where is the church calling this out? You may have someone mention this stuff's bad somewhere, but but they won't call it evil. As a Christian, as a church, we have to be bigger than the world. We have to look at all of it and say, this is what's evil. This is what's good. This is the way of life. This is the way of death. And champion that which is good. There's far too many whose lives have been and minds have been conformed to this world, not the things above. If we want to change the way things are, we got to change ourselves first. That's what we got to do. There's no other answer here. There's no other solution. Everything else, it is dependent on that. Go to the PTA meetings, go run for, go be a part, do those things. But if you haven't conformed your mind, if you haven't been transformed, rather, let me rephrase it that way. If your mind hasn't been transformed to God, if you're not going daily, again, taking all thoughts captive, working out your salvation with fear and trembling, if you're not in the process of doing that, it's like we treat it like, oh, well, I've said a prayer, I'm done. No. If you aren't constantly doing that, then you're going to be conformed to this world. Of what value is it for us to fight if we're ultimately in the same situation? It's the same song, just a slightly different tune. If we're not transformed, it doesn't mean jack diddly squat. Romans 12:2 is telling us this is what 1 and 2. This is what you got to be. It's from this that everything else is coming from. When we read all of the evils in Romans, we're going to go through Romans, but when we read through them, if you're like, man, yeah, this is just wrong. It's evil. It's the worst thing ever. Great. You better bring that exact same ferocity to the rest of the list. If you don't, maybe you're really not as offended as you think. Maybe you're just looking to find something that allows you to virtue signal that you're offended. You can have all the anger in the world, and be offended by all of these things in the world. But if you don't have that same anger when it comes to gossip, you're not really then that's not really what's going on here. You're looking for things that you can stick your hat on that makes you feel like you've transformed your mind. Is your heart broken by the things that breaks God's heart? If not, we have to be transformed. That means looking at what God has told us is right and wrong and genuinely believing it and actually making that real in our lives on a daily basis. Bat Mom has a great point. We disassociate ourselves from others' pain. It's not, and what's worse is not just that we disassociate ourselves, we enjoy other pain or the pain of other people. One of my favorite scenes in the first Spider-Man movie, the one with Tobey Maguire, is when the Green Goblin has tranquilized him and he's sort of paralyzed and he's on the roof and he's like, look, I'm going to talk to you for a minute. And he says, yeah, the city loves you right now because you're the hero. But the only thing people like more than a hero is seeing the hero fail, fall, be humiliated. And that's 100% true. No truer words are spoken. And the reason I've thought about that, that scene has stuck in my head so much, is again but this one's actually from a comic. Essentially, J. Jonah Jameson is talking to another character. It's sort of irrelevant, but he was like, "Why do you hate Spider-Man so much?" And he said, and really all the heroes. He said, "These heroes run around with their masks on, protecting their identity, and they're running around doing all of these good things, supposedly, without reward, without recognition." And he couldn't believe that that was what was happening. He said people who are going to put their lives on the line, who are time and time and time and time again go through the pain and suffering that these heroes are going through, or that they at least appear to be going through from his perspective. He's like, no, people should be. He's like, no, people should want rewards for that. They should want accolades for that. And if they don't, if these people were really going through all this stuff and not getting the accolades and they're just genuinely doing it, what does it say about us, the normal people? One of the big reasons, I've sort of talked about this in the past, one of the big reasons I think we like to see heroes fall, we like to see people get torn down, is it makes us feel better about ourselves. Which is why we embrace gossip. Our news is gossip. It's not even news anymore. It's just the gossip. Because then we don't feel so bad about ourselves. Like I said, so I've talked about this for a while. Why is it we like to put these heroes on pedestals, right? Abraham. Like every time when we tell the story of Moses, we reshape it so that he's the hero. We omit the whole God nearly kills him because he's frustrated with Moses. That we hide the fact that Moses was too scared to go before Pharaoh, and so Aaron goes before Pharaoh. That it's Aaron's staff that turns into the Nile crocodile. It's not a snake. I don't care what Cecil B. DeMille says. We make these people out to be heroes, and we put them on pedestals because if they're up there, then they're greater than we are. And it absolves us of doing the hard work. It's, well, I can't do that. I'm not Paul. I can't do that. I'm not Abraham. I can't do that. I'm not Moses or David or John or Peter or fill in the blank. The Bible tells us these people were not necessarily heroes. They give us their failures so we can see us. These people were not different from us. They weren't some new species of being. They weren't something that was just carved out of some special material and were greater than all of other humans who've ever lived. They weren't. They were humans like you and I, like everyone else. But we put them on pedestals so that we can absolve ourselves of being like them. We like embracing gossip to tear down people who are doing big things because then it absolves us of doing small things. And by small, I don't mean impact. I mean just watching football. No, not calling out football specifically, but you get my point. Things that are just about you, your entertainment, your pleasure. I'm not saying everything you have to live as a monk at all. That's not what I'm saying. But is everything you do about you? Is everything you're doing about making you feel better about things? Are you presenting yourself as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable? Are you continually transforming yourself by the renewal of your mind? Testing what's the will of God to see what is good and acceptable and perfect, and then doing it. We put people on pedestals so we don't feel bad about ourselves because we make them special. We say, I'm not special. And then we tear other people down to say, see, they're not really special. We never take the beam out of our eye because that's hard. How do we be bigger than the world around us? How do we live the lives that we were called to? Romans 12, 1 and 2. That's it. We think, oh, I've got to lead an army, or I've got to have I have to have 10 million followers on Facebook or whatever. I have to write the great American novel that will change the hearts and lives of everyone. Nope. Nope. It's not about the size. Big thing, small thing. It's not about the size or the grandeur. It's about whether or not it's about you or everyone else. And are you doing it for God? Are you transforming your mind? And living your life in that way? That's what we're called to. On that note, great question from Batmon. That was the compromise. Moses was there. Aaron spoke for Moses. That's how that worked. That is one thing Cecil B. DeMille gets right, is that Aaron, at least it's Aaron's rod that goes up. But no, go back and reread that story. It's Aaron's rod that turns and it turns into a crocodile. It does not turn into a snake. That's a whole other kettle of fish. But yeah, he didn't do it. He was there, but Aaron spoke for Moses. All of these people were flawed. They show you the flaws of all of these people because they were people. They were people. That's the important thing. We aren't supposed to worship them. We're not supposed to idolize them. We are supposed to see ourselves in them, our failure, our weaknesses, and realize that God can use you. That's what we're supposed to see. God doesn't need you to be perfect. He perfects you. It is in humility that we look at other people. It's with grace that we look at other people. That's how it goes. On that note, love y'all. I'm gonna go find a way to take a nap. Again, I didn't get in until 4 something this morning. My wife's flight was really, really late getting in, so I'm cruising on like 3.5 hours of sleep at best. So love y'all. And it's a beautiful day out there wherever you are, even if it's raining, still a beautiful day because it's a day you're above ground. It's a day that you get to live and serve the glory of God. Love y'all.